I'm not gonna disclose in this point. This is not a safe
That's
environment.
my friend. He passed away, unfortunately, during that time, especially in the family.
And to have people sort of celebrate you for being able to endure and be resilient and not just living, thriving.
Living with HIV, taking medications just like any other chronic
That's the
illness.
reality of my journey with HIV. It started violent.
There's more to us than just these 3 letters.
Hey,
Hey, long time no see.
I know, it's been ages.
My name's Beau, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm living with HIV.
My name's Emily, my pronouns are she or they, and I'm a friend of Beau's. It's been a whole year.
A whole year.
I'm still pregnant. Outrageous. Do you remember the first time you faced stigma or discrimination because of your HIV status?
So I think interesting for me, the first time I experienced HIV stigma was actually before I had HIV. And then I was at a bar and making out with someone, and he went away and was talking to friends, and then didn't engage with me for the rest of the night. And then I spoke to him afterwards being like, what the hell happened there? And he was like, oh, my friends told me I shouldn't make out with you because you have HIV. And for me, as a negative person at the time, it was a very oh wow, pos people have to deal with this shit all the time. And when I was positive, I think I remember being at a sex on premises venue and hooking up with someone one day, and then I was there a few weeks later and bumped into the same person, and he took me into a room and then was just like, do you have HIV? And I think he must have read my status on my Grindr profile, and it had freaked out in his head. But I was like, oh, he was a muscly dude. We're in this small room. I was just like, I'm not gonna disclose in this point. This is not a safe environment. And then I said no, and then he was just got awkward. But yeah, it just reminded me of how how intense people can get about it, especially if it's kind of an imagined risk on their end. Yeah, you see that a bit in obviously lots of guys take PrEP now, right? So no risk of transmission. I'm undetectable, also no risk of transmission, but then they won't sleep with openly positive people. So it's just well, you've already done, we're already stopping HIV transmission twice.
Of precaution do you need to feel comfortable? And I think that's the stigma.
Are there any common misconceptions or stereotypes about HIV that you've come across, and how do you respond to them?
People have a lot of misconceptions about how it's transmitted. You can't get it, just from saliva.
Also, people having this idea that you would be able to tell if someone had HIV, that people with muscles don't have HIV, all of those types of...
women don't get it, straight women don't get it.
Yeah, I remember just getting my hair cut with the barber a few days ago, and talking about my work, talking about HIV, and he was basically like, a condom's still the best way to protect myself. And I was like, well, they're good, but people are really bad about using them. And I was explaining why, and he was like, oh, thank God, other guys have that problem. I hate condom. And I was like, and then I was telling him about PrEP, and he had never heard of it before ever. So it's kind of, getting the information out to people is so much harder than I think kind of anyone's anticipating.
All right. How often do you find yourself dealing with stigma related to your HIV status?
Sometimes it just comes up in really unexpected situations. And yeah, as you were saying before, sometimes it's very well intentioned. I remember with my orthodontist, because I have braces and I see him quite regularly, and there's white marks on each side of my tongue from where my tongue is rubbing against the metal of the braces. And at one point he was like staring at my tongue and like looking at it, and then he knows I'm positive, and he was like, oh, so how's your HIV treatment going? And I basically had to be like, it's not oral thrush, like, because it's like he had like jumped like into like an AIDS defining illness going on in my mouth, and I was just like, okay, so you know a little bit, but you obviously don't know too much.
In your view, where does the stigma and discrimination surrounding HIV originate?
I think fear and anxiety. I think especially for like gay men who grew up in the 90s and 2000s, like HIV was just like a looming kind of specter over sex at all times. And I think, like, I still remember the first HIV test I had, and you know, I had barely had sex, had only had sex with another isolated suburban gay guy who had only had sex with me. We both had terrible sex because two virgins, terrible. Anyway, but like I almost had this impression that like HIV would like spontaneously create itself through gay sex. But like it's very rare that like someone else has a health condition like cancer or something and be like, well, did you wear sunscreen?
Yeah, even if it's melanoma.
Yeah. So yeah.
Diabetes, what the fuck have you been eating?
Yeah, good food.
Yeah, it was delicious.
In your opinion, what can individuals in society do to combat HIV stigma and promote understanding and acceptance?
I think stuff like this is pretty good, but I think more knowledge, I think is helpful. You know, stuff like, if that people can be untransmittable at all, for one thing.
And like, I do think how mundane it's become is kind of almost a challenge to it, like, because
yeah, nobody's going to make movies like all the old scary, depressing ones now where somebody just takes a pill a day and has a very ordinary, boring life. Yeah,
the boring office worker with HIV, the movie, we just need to like retcon movies and be like, actually, Barbie had HIV the whole time in the movie.
Start campaigning.
It's just a red herring. Didn't come up in the movie, but it's definitely canon.
Because it's not particularly relevant to the story.
Definitely canon.
What do you think society can do to break down these barriers and foster greater understanding and acceptance?
Yeah, I think finding new, interesting ways for representation is really important. Like, I don't think we've found a way to make the new reality of HIV interesting enough that people are engaging with it. I always think about starting treatment and like people at the beginning being like, oh, get a pill box because, you don't want to miss a tablet. And I'm like, how could I ever forget? Like, this is such a, it's such a kind of emotionally weighty thing to do, to be taking HIV treatment. And now the amount of times I've sat there staring, being like, have I taken a tablet yet? I have no recollection of that memory because it's just gotten so mundane. Yeah. But I think, we just need to find ways to get people to kind of relearn what HIV is, because I think the stigma and fear is still so high that I feel like it is getting passed down, so we can't just like expect it to kind of shift with the culture and generation shifting. Like, the stigma and fear is getting passed down. And so we just need to step in and kind of, it is like we need to relearn what HIV is, because the HIV people have in their heads and the HIV that exists now are very different things, especially in Australia. So I think that's to me, that's the biggest challenge. Like, how do we make good, somewhat boring news interesting enough that people that people engage with it?
Yeah, got nothing.
No.
That's it, I'm done.